Welcome. My name is Grant Crowley and I'm a retired Army Colonel, and this is my story. In 1972, I was a captain in the New Zealand Army, and I had a telephone call from the military secretary, who was the person responsible for Army officer postings, and said to me, Grant, would you like to be the ADC to the Governor General as a posting and go to London to escort him back before he takes up office? So I thought about it for about a millisecond and then thought that would be a good idea. So they had to get me to London, and they arranged for me to travel on an RAF VC-10 aircraft, which was being sent out to New Zealand to pick up the Victoria Cross and George Cross winners from both New Zealand and Australia. One of the Victoria Cross winners on the plane owned a hotel in Devonport, and I think brought along most of the alcohol supplies from his hotel. Whenever we had a stop or whenever there was a break, bottles were broken out in this aircraft. So by the time we got to London 3 days later, we were all in a bit of a state. So we arrived in Brize Norton, which is an RAF base in London, and I was taken into town to the High Commission in London and met the Governor General designate, Sir Dennis Blundell, and Lady Blundell's wife, June Blundell. Soon after, went to lunch with them, and Sir Dennis said to me, well, Grant, you don't need to hang around here with us for a month while we get ready to go, so I've arranged for you to be attached to Buckingham Palace as an equerry to the Queen. And you start on Monday. So Monday I put my suit on and went down the Mall and knocked on the door of Buckingham Palace, and met by the regular equerry, a guy called Squad Leader Peter Beer, who since became an Air Vice Marshal actually, and then joined the palace staff. The first job I had was to join Peter and travel down to a house just outside London where the Queen had a weekend with one of her friends. So we arrived down there, we had a police escort. Peter said, just join the end of the line of the domestic staff that were lined up at on the veranda, and the Queen will come out and she'll probably say something to you, and then we'll get in the car and go. And so I lined up behind the domestic staff, and the Queen came down the line, said, welcome Grant, let's go. And that was really, I was just accepted into her sort of personal stuff like that. No fuss at all. She's pretty much a no fuss person really. So we piled into the Rolls Royce with the police escort and drove back to Buckingham Palace in London. I was taken into the fold quite quickly. There was no formality. I was just expected to be a part of the team. So my time there was quite busy because it was the high season for the Queen. Her program was very busy, and I recall we did a couple of garden parties, there was an investiture, there was the big royal tournament at Earl's Court. We launched the lifeboat at Henley-on-Thames. We opened a hospital, the Charles Hayward Hospital, and the Queen she was visiting some of the wards, and there was a bunch of nurses at one end of the wharf all standing there looking a bit sort of nervous, and then they noticed that I had my New Zealand arm flashes on, so they were very surprised that a Kiwi was there with the Queen, so that was a source of some amusement to them, I think. It's interesting, the royal family were often gathered together. For example, at the garden party, they'd all gather in one room before going out into the veranda and going into the throng. The thing about them is that they're all very normal. And there's no bullshit, there's no pretense, no fuss. They get on and do the job really, and everyone's expected just to get on. There's no, people have a view, I think, that they're sort of a bit upper class, hoi polloi, but they're not actually. they're about as ordinary as you can get, really, which is quite a surprise, really. Not a job I'd like to do, to be honest, but they're sort of born into it. It was quite an interesting trip. Even now I pinch myself on how did a 26-year-old Kiwi get involved in that sort of business. Yeah. I put my car in there, they took it over for me. I drove around the airfield at Lenham. I don't know why. It's just been stupid. That's the helicopter.